My God, that voice does not ever stop being creepy. Um,
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the
Welcome back
11th
to the
episode of our
Financial
podcast.
Decapitation Podcast. This is episode
11.
11. 1-1. And sorry for missing last week. Our schedules are cleared up now, so we're gonna try to do a consistent weekly podcast. Seize the opportunity while we have it. So I guess I'll open up today. Just for context, today is May 19th, Tuesday. And there's a few different topics actually I want to talk we can talk about today. Um, you guys have anything pressing that you want to get into, or should I just sort of open up?
I did actually have an open discussion I wanted to incite at some point. Depends
Sure,
on if you want to
shoot.
start on your hot topic or not.
No, let's start with the open discussion.
Well, it's a very general question, and there's a lot of answers for it. But I just wanted to see what you guys thought was the bigger reason is why FANG stocks are pretty much all at their all-time high, and they're all ignoring all the pandemic issues that have incited into pretty much all their businesses in the market.
What stock?
So FANG. So to the listeners who don't know what FANG stocks are, FAANG is how it's spelled, and it's basically an acronym for the representation of the largest stocks in the market, which is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google.
And the question is why are they not impacted by the pandemic?
Yeah, why are they not impacted? Why are they literally all at all-time highs? They're all soaring, skyrocketing. They're all at their most valuable they've ever been.
I mean, probably just from knowing what stocks we're talking about here, to an extent, some of it can be very self-explanatory. Biggest one would probably be Netflix. I mean, where people are quarantined, they want to watch things. You got to pick from different streaming sites and stuff. So I mean, Netflix would be included in that. I could definitely see that going up.
I mean, Amazon is also everyone shipping everything to themselves now.
Yeah, everything seems to be out of stock on Amazon all the time now.
That's true, but so many things are now moving to delivery. And also, you have to remember Amazon is also involved not only in online sales, but also streaming itself as Amazon Prime. Amazon Web Services, I mean, is needed more than ever now that everyone's just home on the internet. So you need hosting and cloud computing services. No, I mean, it makes sense. Facebook, again, people are just home. They're going to be scrolling through their social feeds on Facebook or Instagram. And which acquisition did they make recently? I'm trying to remember.
Facebook? I can't recall.
Yes. Well, technically, I believe it was like Instagram that purchased.
They also bought WhatsApp.
Yeah, WhatsApp. So any sort of like group chats.
But that was a while ago.
Oh, yeah, Giphy. There we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense too because Facebook and Google were doing a lot of approaches to assist with people doing meetings, online meeting. Whether or not they've gathered more people, the fact that they're trying to transform and adjust to these pandemic like behaviors, I think that probably gave them a curve to avoiding any type of major impacts and losses.
The only
Because
thing sorry.
No, go ahead.
The only thing I can't quite figure out is Apple.
Well, they
Yeah,
did. They were quite heavily impacted for a period of time. They probably lost 50% of their value, but they've already fully recovered. Yeah. At this point in time, they're pretty much worth now what they were before.
I mean, I'm assuming it's possible that because Apple does have its own streaming service as well, that has picked up some traffic. Um, but I just
I mean, Apple
trying.
has a lot of exclusive subscription based as well as household based items uh, that they sell. I'm sure their ad revenue is also doing pretty good because I mean, if anyone has an Apple device and they're using Siri or those Apple Home devices, um, you're going to be running ads, collecting data. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's the data that's giving them a good amount of money. I'm pretty sure right now most companies are mining so much great data on this.
It's not
Oh,
Um,
it's
only
on
that, they
certainly.
still sell more than just phones. They sell, they're still selling a shit ton of computers, especially now that people are at home, because you see computers are
Sure.
selling like hotcakes. Screw hotcakes. Computers are selling like French fries. And game consoles and everything. People are still buying up tons of tech. They just released like a new iPhone that's like, what was it, $400 or way cheaper. It's like a remodeled iPhone 8, I think it was, something like that.
Hmm.
yeah, they've been. I think this was maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. Apple was venturing into value phone markets with the iPhone R. So it's no surprise that they're going to want to expand that line of production because I mean it's name brand items. People are going to buy it, and then at some point when they do have enough money, they'll end up buying
Well, the
the
idea
more
behind that
expensive
was that
products.
they wanted to keep increasing consistently $50 a year the average cost of their iPhone, and they didn't want to slow down the price increase. But to keep people from no longer buying their phones, they had to also release a cheaper alternative because at some point their phones have become way too expensive. And that's just most phones in general. You're buying ultimately, I mean, there's a shit ton of tech, but these phones cost thousands already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so releasing a cheaper alternative was a solid option, and a lot of companies have done that. They're like Google with the Pixel A lineup, and there's a bunch of other companies releasing cheap alternatives at this point now that are quite competitive. Like you don't necessarily need to have the most expensive phone to get an Android experience now, because you may have at some point where other phones are unusable. But yeah, so Apple is still doing quite well. Uh, Facebook, like those acquisitions weren't super recent, but they're doing solid on those ad revenue. I don't know. Amazon, kind of self-explanatory. Same thing with Netflix. Google, they that's also a little bit of a tough one because they're at an all-time high. But like, I mean, yeah, they're essentially a tech company, and everyone's at home using tech on the internet, and so it makes a lot of sense. But holy crap, they're practically, I don't know, recession proof.
Could it be
They're
they're
um,
not.
overvalued currently?
Hmm?
Could it just be they're overvalued or overhyped currently?
No, I don't think so. I'd
well,
say the opposite.
these behaviors that we've seen in the market are also not recessionary. So
Yeah, I
we're
think I used the wrong term there, but I think
yeah
you know what I mean.
they well yeah I'm just
Pandemic
clarifying
proof.
they yeah I wouldn't say they're pandemic proof or crisis proof or anything proof really. I think they adjusted well to the circumstance because Google came out with Google Meet and again, hedging the market in the event that the situation arised where the market was starting to shift. Google wanted to capture the audience. I mean, Zoom, when the crisis happened, people were immediately like, yeah, let's go to Zoom, let's do Zoom. Well, Zoom, as we all know, is not like the best alternative, and more companies started to adjust. Facebook, for example, did the, free group of 50 meetings and stuff on
Yeah.
Messenger, which was pretty big. People are on Facebook now and get to connect instead of having to use Zoom or another alternative. Google came out with Google Meet, which I don't use, but I do know some coworkers who use that, and I'm sure Google is gathering some type of audience that's using their services. So I mean, I guess it's no surprise that Facebook, Google, Microsoft isn't in the discussion on FANG stocks, but Microsoft is doing pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
Teams,
yeah,
Microsoft
Teams,
Teams.
Teams is very good.
Yeah, at
Uh,
my former job, they literally switched over completely from Skype Business to Microsoft Teams, like on a company-wide level.
yeah,
So, yeah, they're definitely uh, they're not doing terrible.
Actually, another company that's worth mentioning up there is Alibaba.
I can look at
Alibaba. Yeah,
I can look at
that's an
Alibaba.
interesting one.
Yeah, they're doing well. They've managed to continue to keep up with solid revenue stream, and they haven't seemed to really slow down.
Pretty
Yeah,
much recovered.
their
Seems like.
value is pretty consistent.
That's an interesting company. How they became so um, useful. I don't know. They like only went public after years and years and years and years in business, and the way they operate is just like I don't know. It's kind of odd because I've also ordered stuff off of Alibaba before. Not all the experiences were very solid, and I sometimes wonder how they became so big.
Well, I think a
Well,
lot of their business because they're a Chinese multinational tech company for e-commerce, retail, internet service, that type of stuff. I think just because they're a Chinese company, I'm sure
Yeah,
a
they
lot
can
of its
operate.
visits are using.
They don't have to operate globally to become big because there's just that many people in China. But
Yeah,
the fact is that the whole I think the largest concept behind the company is that they are global, that they are international, that they can connect people anywhere. So that's the idea is that like you can buy anything from anywhere and it shouldn't be a problem through them.
yeah,
well, you also have to remember the reason it also got so big inherently because it's a Chinese company is the Chinese government is basically subsidizing them at every turn.
yeah. I mean, that's how their economic system works.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean that's why I typically refrain from investing on Chinese companies, only because it gets a little dicey when you're looking at financial records where the money is coming from.
Luckin
Um,
Coffee comes
yeah,
to mind.
that's a super good example. Yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very good example.
Who was being unlisted? No, Luckin
Well, the
Coffee.
ticker was frozen for a period of time.
Oh
Uh,
man, I totally forgot that. Okay, if I remember this, or maybe I'll go find out. But there was a company that I was talking to with my dad that was publicly traded here in the States, and it's basically a Chinese company where I don't remember exactly what they do. They're a Chinese company where it's publicly known that a lot of their records, or they're being investigated, that a lot of their records are actually just completely made up, and
wow.
their stock hasn't really reflected it yet. So it would have been a great time to short the company, and it still is now. And I totally forgot what it was. If I remember it, or maybe I'll step out for a second and go find out. But um, yeah, that was definitely worth an interesting look because that company is bound to tank if it hasn't already tanked once they discover that yeah, it really is all bullshit, and there's some money to be made if you bet against them.
Well, if their records are false, then the same thing with Lucky is going to happen to them, where their ticker is going to get frozen. I mean, they're gonna.
They're being delisted from Nasdaq.
Oh, okay, yeah, and delisted. I mean, if something's as volatile as that, or sorry, not volatile, if something is as apparent as that, where like, yeah, we know they falsified their numbers, we're just gonna freeze the ticker. We're not even gonna let it trade because at that point, it's gonna create so much catastrophe on the financial markets. So I mean, if you can get in on the short now, in the event that it does get frozen, that would
Then
probably
you
be a
made
good choice.
almost 100% of your money.
Well, no,
Wait,
because
is that the case where if it does get delisted, you just don't have to buy it back?
what do you mean if you have options or asset
No,
holdings?
no.
Delisted?
You short a stock, so you sold to open essentially, and you have to buy to close the position. And they delist the stock. How do you buy to close?
Well, I mean, if they get delisted, that would probably be on the equivalence of a company going bankrupting and being delisted. You'd make no money. Your
No.
contract would be
You shorted, so you sold it, and your position is open. Now you have to buy it to close the position. So if they get delisted, you buy it at 0, right?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that when a stock gets delisted, you can't trade them, period. So I don't know how that would work, but yeah, I'm not sure how that one would work. Because once something is frozen or delisted, you can't trade it. If you had a holding in the asset, you'd make no money. It'd be a 100% loss on purchase. So I don't know how the contract would execute, but that would be interesting.
No, not a contract. You just short the stock in general.
Right. I'm just saying I don't know if you would make any money from it. It's delisted. So I don't know how you would buy it at 0, but then what would the value be?
Well, it's not buying it. It's the opposite. So if you manage to jump in before they delist it, then once it's valueless, your buyback is a 0 cost. So you make whatever you sold it for at first.
Right. Oh, okay. I think I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. If you short the stock, you find the funds in your account, and then the idea is you have to buy it back. So you have to buy it to close the position, and if it's dropped a shit ton, or if they delisted it, so now it's valueless, you buy it back at its valueless point, or your position. I think maybe just close your position if it becomes delisted.
I mean, you can't though.
Well, no, that's the thing is you can't buy it back. So I think your position would just be closed if the company leaves the market completely. I would have to look this up to be sure, and I'd actually be really interested in looking up this company. Let me see. Maybe I'll step out for a second right now while you guys continue to discuss without me, and I'll find out this company because this is a hot topic that I thought would be a great time to jump on.
Okay. Let me look up, try to find out, investigate if what happens in that scenario that you just presented.
When a company delists,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, from my understanding, you can't trade. It's they typically get frozen before they get delisted, and once something's frozen, you can't trade it. Lucky was the same way. I'm sure you remember their ticker was frozen for
Yeah.
months. Actually, I think even now it's still frozen. You can't trade with them. It wouldn't make sense. I mean, the financial market would fluctuate so drastically in the event that occurred. It just wouldn't make sense. That's why we freeze. That's why we delist.
Oh, so no, a short seller would win completely in that scenario.
So it would
Oh,
be a 100%.
A short seller owes nothing if it goes bankrupt or gets delisted because
Hmm.
shares are worthless.
Huh. That is interesting.
that would be really interesting then. Yeah, so then I should definitely go find out. Okay, I'm gonna step out real quick. 3 seconds. I'll be right back.
Collateral being returned. Oh,
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Huh. Now, I guess the question is how many people actually do that, and what's the time frame that needs to be done. That's what would be very interesting
yeah.
to see.
Yeah. Hmm. Very interesting. Um, I guess we can wait until Peter's back.
I am back.
But well, you're back.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull it up. He said that the ticker symbol was GSF.
GSF.
No, that's not right.
Gore Street Storage Fund.
No,
PLC.
no, it's not right. Hold on. It was some really odd Chinese sounding company.
Is it Grieg Seafood ASA?
No.
Seafood?
1 second. Let me verify. I think this is wrong. Hold on.
Yeah, so all right, how about you, Circus? What would you have that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I mean, it was just something that pertained to our platform and our medium of podcasting, and I know we just literally just discussed this before we went live and recorded. But one of the top and most popular podcasts out there.
All right, sorry about that. It's GSX. There we go. Okay, GSX Techedu, TECHEDU Inc. Somehow they're up 3% today. If you look at the most recent news, it literally just says Chinese stock plunges at short seller claims most users are not real. This company says 90% of their users could be fake. This company says they're reporting false financials. Lawsuit against GSX, class action lawsuit. Something about looming deadline. Yeah, and somehow they're up 3% today. So they're still being traded. And if it turns out a lot of their financials are fake, you're going to see them drop even more. For sure. And they're up a lot over the last 6 months. Actually, a lot.
Wow. Says 70% of Beijing-based GSX users are bots, and the real number is like the 80% or more.
Yeah, and they're up. Like, they haven't been impacted by the pandemic. In fact, they saw an increase in their stock, and they are like January, December. They were around $23. They're at like $33 right now. Their stock price. Chances are they're pretty overvalued, and their financials look. I don't know. They look fishy. And you look into the news, and yeah, I looked at this yesterday. And you look at them, and it's off. It's really bizarre, the reporting.
Wow.
And all of the news just happens to be about like class action lawsuits and how everything is faked, or that a lot of people think it's faked. So this might be a hot chance to short them. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of my analysis is all econometric based, so I mean, a lot of that requires historical. So I actually don't have any insightful input on this. Yeah, I don't know.
This company was only listed about a year ago.
Yeah,
Just under a year ago. So they're not even. They haven't even been listed for all that long. It looks like
June last year.
June last year. Yeah. So they don't have very much historical data, and if they're getting sued up the wazoo, chances are there's something behind that. Yeah, I'm gonna do a little more research on this, and then if I'm confident, I might short them and report back the next episode, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
That's I think it's a good catch.
I
Who knows?
mean,
Could be 100% increase if they do get frozen. If it's really that bad, could be another lucky situation.
damn.
And yeah, Chinese company, so it's also very possible. You have no idea what's actually going on there, where their money's coming from, and what the heck is going on.
yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, just getting back to what I was talking about. One of the biggest shows on our platform in our medium, um, the Joe Rogan Experience, recently just announced that they are going to be exclusive to Spotify, both in audio and visual form.
Visual.
Yeah. So they had the Joe Rogan podcast has a YouTube channel, very popular, with a separate one for clips. Um, and it seems like starting September 1st, they're going to be fully exclusive to Spotify. So essentially, no more full episodes on YouTube, and rather it would just be clips of it available there. If you want full episodes to listen or watch, you would go through Spotify, and you wouldn't be able to like hear new episodes of the podcast on iTunes or like I have another app called like Podcast Republic. Like I would have to go through Spotify to listen. Um, they since it is an exclusivity deal, there is going to be obviously an upfront payment, though that is not disclosed how much. Um, it's pretty interesting because Spotify really is gunning for the podcasting space. It last year bought Anchor, which is the platform that we use on this podcast to upload and distribute our episodes, our audio episodes, and it automatically distributes to iTunes, Spotify, etc. And they also bought Gimlet Media, which is a production company that produces various podcasts. Um, it's pretty interesting. They're really gunning for iTunes, which is the premier kind of dominant form since the marketplace since the beginning for podcasts. So pretty interesting to see.
That's pretty big because Joe Rogan is the largest podcast in the world.
It's let me get out the exact number again.
I'm looking at his YouTube channel right now. He has 8.5 million subscribers, which is big, and it seems that he averages several million views per video. So that's a pretty large revenue stream that he's making
He
exclusive.
disclosed last year in Spotify. Let me just pull it out again. It is here we go from The Verge. The article from The Verge. There we go. Rogan said last year his show reached about 190 million downloads a month on average. That's yeah. So his YouTube channels will still remain live, but they will not have full episodes. And
That's
Spotify is also apparently working with the Obama's production company on exclusive like deals and shows. They
Wait,
already
I'm sorry,
have.
what? Obama has a production company?
Apparently they do.
Why?
Yeah, podcast deal with Obama's production company.
What? Okay.
Higher Ground Productions.
Never heard of it. That's completely news to me. That's okay.
They also have some deals with both Joe Button and Amy Schumer for their own exclusive shows for Spotify. So this is just kind of one in a list of kind of Spotify really trying to dominate that industry, that sector.
Oh, hey, listen, Spotify. If you guys are listening to this, exclusivity deals, we're listening here.
Hey man, if you
I'm not so against it.
we may not get as many downloads as Joe Rogan, but
hey, we will. We're getting
with your help. With a simple loan of $1 million.
Hey, it's a small loan of $1 million.
Small loan of $1 million.
Yeah. That's kind of a interesting interesting new market because podcasts have really blown up in popularity over the last couple of years.
Oh
No one really cared about podcasts like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it is an interesting time or move, I think, to try and capitalize on that market.
Oh yeah, it's become way more competitive. Everyone's getting into it. Even big names like Conan O'Brien, late night host. He's had a podcast for a little bit now, and they obviously have sponsorships and everything. Big time guests. Uh, oh my God, I'm blanking on names right now. Two actresses from The Office have their own podcast called The Office Ladies, where they'll watch The Office and like comment on it and talk about like, behind the scenes stuff. Um, oh my God, can't remember the names unfortunately at the moment. Um, but yeah, you'll see like so many people are moving on to this new medium. Um, and
Well,
it makes sense.
there's a lot of podcasts that have been around for a long time. Like
Yeah,
like a solid 10 years they've been around. So it's not new. It's just uh, finding newly found interest.
it's true. But it seems like really the money hasn't. I won't say hasn't been there, but the money has exponentially increased in the last couple of years. We actually did a study on this at uh, my previous job. We had an assignment with us new associates, and we did it about podcast advertising, and it's increased exponentially the last couple of years from the studies that we found. Um, and the it was the rate of conversions essentially um, was much higher through podcast and uh, a lot of other channels comparatively. Um,
You mean like the effectiveness of the advertisement?
yeah, how many people were likely to actually follow through and buy a product or a service that was advertised on the podcast
Oh, I
was much
see.
because you build a sense of credibility with the customer. Specifically, if you, as the host, are the one reading the advertisement.
So, oh, I see. It feels a little more personable, I guess, because they're talking about it. So it sounds like they stand behind it rather than just like turning it into just like another video advertisement like you get
Exactly.
on TV. Like YouTube has become where every video just opens up with, and this video is sponsored by, I don't know, Raid Shadow Legends or something like that.
Great channel engines, or specifically more like the pre-roll ads. Well, you'll load up a video and then suddenly there'll be like a, let's say, Clorox commercial or something, and it's just like some random commercial that would just be the same if it was you saw it on TV. The podcast read host read uh, uh, advertisement is much more effective.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's an interesting space to watch and observe grow and change.
That's kind of cool. I feel like that makes sense. That's conversion rate is higher. That's interesting.
Um,
Podcasting experience is a little more
Intimate.
intimate. Yeah, that's the word. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kinda cool.
So yeah, there's that, and I'm really interested to see how iTunes is going to respond. And we'll see what sort of competition flares up between um these kind of these two big platforms. Hopefully, some interesting stuff will happen. We'll see.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see. See how they counter that.
Well, all right. So, you guys have
So-
any other interesting topics you want to talk about? My main thing was just the open discussion today.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the economic news coming out, Congress is wanting to get more stimulus checks out, another round of 1,200 to the people. It's interesting to see what kind of impact that's going to have, because a lot of people are still wanting to study what the first round did, how efficient it was.
They're still passing out the first round.
Well, I didn't know they're still passing out the first round, but they're thinking about getting the second round out.
Yeah,
But-
not everyone has received the money yet.
In fact, they're opening up a new method of distribution. So previously, it was only either direct deposit or you get a check in the mail. Now they're having a third option of they're gonna send you a preloaded debit card with your stimulus check on it.
Wow, that is okay. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Which is
That's-
similar to how they distribute unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits come loaded um, on a debit card, and that's provided through Bank of America. And then from there, you can either freely, direct deposit that into your own bank account, or spend it like a regular card, what have you. It's
yeah,
essentially an option for people who don't currently have bank accounts.
yeah,
That does kind of make sense. Yeah, I think there was something similar to financial aid for colleges and universities, where when I started off in Los Angeles Valley College, they basically gave me a LACCD, like a debit card or something to accept the money, and then you were able to just deposit it directly into your bank account or just take the money. So it's not like they're really tracking your spending. It's just another means of giving you the cash. Although I think they can track your spending if you just use it that way, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about if they can track the spending on the stimulus cards. I know on the unemployment debit card that they pass out or distribute, that they say they do not track your spending. Although I guess technically, if they wanted to, they could. So I don't know.
They do to some extent, although I don't think they track it that way. Like I saw reports of where some dude had some issues because he spent his stimulus money on jewelry or something, and he talked about it publicly on a social media platform or something like that, and then they went after him. And I don't remember who or what, but I just heard an instance like this. So I think it might be possible that they just want to know that like your money is going towards bills and rent and whatnot rather than jewelry or I don't know, investments.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but the economic impact I couldn't see being very positive just because money has to come from somewhere. And the feds keep talking about how they have unlimited ammo.
yeah. I
Right.
mean, again, it depends on what kind of effect we see with the money, and I mean, just kind of looking at what the last couple of weeks had in store, we haven't actually seen the dollar shift drastically, which means the income effect against the money supply effect is working itself out, which is good to see, because we're not going to have mass deflation because we're printing money. Um, but I'm more worried about what international trade is going to look like right now, because we're having tensions rising with a lot of our trade partners, only because a lot of our production lines are halted, or whatever we were initially trading in our trade agreements aren't being met. So it's kind of wishy-washy to see what's going to happen in terms of our currency.
Oh yeah, the Chinese trade war isn't over. That's still very much going on, even though there's a pandemic afoot.
Yeah, it's still going on. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what the end result of that's going to be, because I know China is still on the forefront of wanting to negotiate, but at the same time not holding back. And regardless of what's happening right now with the pandemic, I know they're going to be coming in just you know uh, heel to the ground, ready to charge right at it. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. This lockdown situation is very interesting, and the more we see it pan out, the more I'm very skeptical to how we're reacting to it from an economic sense.
Yeah. On top of the second round of stimulus checks in that bill, they also have carved out how much was it? I believe it was 200 billion for pay for essential workers, essentially like a sort of a hazard pay or a bonus to essential workers. Um, and also lengthening um, the increased unemployment benefits, the $600 a week until for the next 6 months. So, because currently that $600 a week is set to end at the end of July, and the new proposed bill that is in Congress currently is going to extend that for 6 more months after that.
Yeah, and
So,
and I mean, you guys already know, and I explained this last week too, that that is going to have absolutely negative effects to when things start to reopen and when employment is going to be or going to be wanting desired again. That's gonna just that puts a spin on how many people are gonna want to re-enter earlier or sooner than others. It's yeah, I see why they did it, but there's gonna be some consequences to that, and the biggest is gonna be people who are making more now than they were working are gonna want to stay unemployed until the
well,
benefits run dry, and then pursue, the uh, pursue looking for work
well,
at a
thing.
higher rate.
Here's the thing, though. At least from my perspective, because currently, for any listeners, I am unemployed, unfortunately. Um, the I do make more now. I'm going to make more now under unemployment than I would at work. If I go back into looking for a job, I'm going to negotiate for a higher pay than than what I'm getting currently through unemployment. Because why would I work for less if currently not working, I'm going to make more?
Because the
Yeah,
idea is that unemployment is also only temporary, so those benefits won't last forever.
well,
And
right, but remember, even if they're not going to last forever, the higher it is, the less likely you are to want to go back to work sooner.
Yeah.
It's
So,
temporary, but it's
yeah,
delaying the employment process,
it
which
is
is an
definitely
issue.
de-incentivizing labor.
Yeah,
well,
and
de-incentivizing labor, but it's also increasing my own expectations and negotiations when it comes to pay during the employment process. So if I do get to the point where I'm negotiating for pay, I'm going to negotiate for something where I either make minimum what I made during unemployment or more.
right. I mean, until the benefits dry out, that is.
So here's another scenario. Think about this. Say you were working at, for instance, McDonald's, right? And you're flipping burgers, you're making minimum wage, and you were doing uh, part time, but you were doing less than full time. And suddenly your hours get dropped, or you get fired because, well, not fired, laid off because all of a sudden McDonald's, that location has a limited number of employees so that they can maintain minimal staff and keep operations, so they can't afford you anymore. You were making minimum wage, you weren't making very much money. Now you're getting unemployment benefits. You're making triple or quadruple what you were making before flipping burgers. Now all of a sudden you find your burger flipping value to be extremely high. What then? How do you re-enter the market where suddenly you were making an extra 20 something $1,000 a year just from the unemployment benefits on
Well,
top of
right. I get what you're saying, but in labor economics, that's not how it works because, well, for a couple reasons. One, you're trying to value work with non-work. So, that's an apples to oranges scenario, so that you actually can't compare those at equal lengths despite there being a disparity on the income level. So yeah, that person might value their time at a higher rate, but they're not valuing burger flipping at a higher rate. So when they do re-enter the market, despite them wanting to have a higher pay because they were unemployed on certain benefits, the market will restrict to how much they can actually ask for. The problem, I would say, isn't necessarily their desire for higher pay. The problem is that, let's just say unemployment benefits went on for a year. Let's just say before the increase, people were trying to re-enter the market at the 6-month period. Now we're going to see people wanting to re-enter at the 8-month or 9-month period and prolong their unemployment state. So I think more or less the issue isn't going to be people wanting to re-enter with higher income. It's going to be now a lack of motivated workers to re-enter before benefits dry up.
I
This puts
have
more
actually
strain.
I've seen firsthand examples of that already.
Yeah,
Um,
Sarkis just illustrated right now. He's doing that.
no, so different, different scenario. My
Negotiate
friend
actually.
who's sorry for cutting out. My friend whose family owns a restaurant. They own a restaurant, and they have several employees working for the restaurant. The restaurant wants to open back up so that they can continue, take out and carry out orders, and they want to like increase their workload. And their employees are saying, "Nah, no thanks. I think we're gonna not work for longer." And they basically said, "Let's wait this one out. You guys should stay close so that we can keep collecting more money."
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's exactly what's going on in that exact scenario. This is a good friend of mine, and this is literally happening to him. So, yeah, firsthand example of this.
It's a consequence, which is why I was more of a supporter of the idea of the government not expanding social benefits, but rather covering for people's expenses directly. So sending state subsidies that covers people's rents for like a month per se. So now you're not gathering income, we're just lowering your expense. So it's not free money. It's not altering your incentive to work and not to work, but it is lowering your financial situation so that you can maintain your employment or your desire or incentive to work rather than losing that incentive because of money that you receive for being unemployed.
Mhm.
And at the same time, also when you do that, now you solve the situation where 1200 creates a CPI disparity, a consumer price index disparity between states, where California's CPI is exponentially higher than Ohio, and if you just cover people's rents, now you're marginally you're covering on a marginal level state by state rather than a flat distribution.
Yeah, because
And
1,200
yeah,
goes way longer in Ohio than it does in California. 1,200
right,
can't cover your rent here sometimes, and then like Ohio, that's a couple months rent. Or
right.
Oklahoma, for
And
example.
and
Yeah,
my and my dad brought up a good point. When I was initially thinking about this, I was saying, well, okay, why don't we send states different amounts of money for the stipend? Problem is state people are in other states are going to complain about people receiving more or less than others.
Yep.
So that's why I just think, okay, well, what if we covered people's rents, utilities, different types of expended fees? We send a subsidy out to states. States will cover those fees. Now there's no de-incentivized situation that we develop where workers don't want to go back to work. And that I think that would have been a long-term solution. That would have been, we don't know price-wise what that would have been, but I would argue that if you take the entire population, rural versus city, and the rents between the two, it could be around the same price that we're spending on these stipends. Um, Only because the country's so spread out. So yeah, I don't know. That could have been a very good solution. Could have been cheaper. But now we're stuck in a situation where people are going to stay on unemployment for a much longer period of time to eat up whatever benefits they can now and then enter the workforce at a later time.
But that also really depends on how well each state is going to implement those programs and cover those expenses. So it's going to be a state by state case on how effective that is, or how if they're able to cover those expenses in a timely manner, or how to set up those programs in each state.
Right.
Yeah. So
And
that
I
leaves
mean
a lot
that
of
would
variability in terms of effectiveness.
Yeah, I mean I would argue it'd be more effective than what the federal government did with the stipend distribution already. There was a huge disparity in that. I'm pretty sure people were delayed on their rent when they didn't receive the check on time. Um, yeah, I mean states aren't going to be as effective as we want them to be, but I could easily argue that they would be more effective than what the federal government can achieve, only because states have the data on what their people need rather than a federal data of what all the people need. Because, it's going to vary from state to state.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but that's why I think it's good that states are starting to discuss reopening, because as much as we don't want people to get sick, I've been reading new articles now with medical professionals who are starting to be incredibly cautious with how long we're doing the quarantine, because when we restrict ourselves from contact from one another, and we put ourselves in a closed environment, at a certain threshold we are weakening our immune system by not being exposed to outside elements or people.
Mm.
And doctors are now concerned, okay, yes, we don't want people to get coronavirus. That is an absolute. However, we don't want people to be reintroduced to the environment and suddenly get sick or sicker from your everyday illnesses only because they haven't been exposed to them. So, an example that I read was the flu. If we've shielded ourselves from each other to the point where now the flu has not been spreading rapidly, that's good. However, the severity could be a lot worse than it was before, only because less people were exposed to it to develop immunity. So, now we got to look at the economic trade-off. Now we got to look at the health trade-off of, do we stay closed and protect ourselves from one illness in lieu of the immune system that we would have if we were exposed to other illnesses? And I think that's a really good question. I didn't even think about that until I read those articles. And that's a problem. That will be a huge problem.
Let's actually just want to do.
So
just wanna
I
do
actually have a question continuing last topic then is if the case is that $1,200 flat, just a flat amount for everyone doesn't make sense, and it's like a lot of people already know this isn't just shared info between us that we think it's not a good idea. This is generally considered by a lot of people not a good idea. Why are they doing the same thing all over again? Why couldn't they come up with a better system or means of distribution or wealth uh, disbursement to like come up with a better way to spend this cash than to just hand out another $1,200 check all over again? Why is round two the exact same thing?
I mean, that's an awesome question, and frankly, when it comes down to government, that question can almost never be answered, because we see them hit their heads on the wall. They look at the wall and they say, "Oh my god, that really hurt." And then they're going to turn around and smash their head into a much harder wall and say, "Wow, that hurt too." And they're just going to go back and forth doing the same thing despite them knowing what the outcome will be.
I mean, there's no
And
way that the people leading us are that stupid. It's
no, they aren't.
Oh no.
They
I
they aren't,
mean,
but they know that the cost is not burdened on them. That's why they can do it. I mean,
it,
did we read anything in the news about them getting pay cuts themselves?
no.
That's yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
what I do know is that there was some serious insider trading going on with certain
Mhm.
Congress
Yep.
people, members of Congress,
what
Yep.
happened.
who had
Oh,
a
I didn't hear
brief
about that.
coronavirus and then suddenly started selling off all their stocks.
Yep. The
Yep.
SEC's investigating a ton of them right now.
Yeah.
Ton of them.
Yep.
It honestly, and this is what upsets me the most, is I think many politicians know that they can use this pandemic and this situation to rein the voters and push them in a desirable direction by pretending or giving off the facade that they are compassionate leaders via here's this stipend check, or I'm a proponent for canceling student debt. It, that's the problem that I don't like, is where many of them want to extrapolate off of a crisis so that they can bolster their public image and deter their opponents. Whether it's Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
All parties are doing it.
the whole reason why it was so quickly passed and immediately money was handed out wasn't just because it was really needed, but it was also something simple, straightforward, and easy to communicate to voters, that that, hey, your elected leaders did this,
Yeah.
so we're good, with the implication to sort of read between the lines of, hey, your leaders are effective, thus keep them in office. Vote for them coming, November.
Yeah. So, I mean, more or less, to build off the analogy I gave with smashing one's face into a wall, the government isn't the one smashing the face in the wall. They're the one smashing our face into the wall, saying, oh man, that looked like that really hurt. And they'll just do it again.
Oh, and then they'll take your face and smash into a different wall and be like, "Oh, that one seems like it hurt more. Let's try the other wall again."
Yeah. Let's see which one hurts you less, but we still have to hit you into a wall.
The concept is similar to like wartime presidents, like for instance, Bush Jr., who after 9/11 started the war on terror. Yeah, basically started the war on terrorism. Yada yada yada. Not getting into it, and was basically reelected because he was a wartime president who oversaw all those problems. That he should be the one to continue to oversee those problems and to finish off what he started. So the country reelected him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's true. Crisis, presidents that are in in eras of crisis or war, they tend to do pretty good, only because it's one of those things where we've bottomed out and there's really nowhere to go but up. And when we're all going up, everyone's like, yeah, I was the leader did it. But in reality, it's like, well, no, we kind of hit the all-time low there, and there was really nowhere you could go but up. So president or no president, we were probably going to go up.
What's interesting is this is an election year, right? We should have elections coming up in only a couple of months now, like in 5 months or something, which is not
Yeah.
that much time considering how much time has passed since the race has begun. And since the start of the pandemic, we've essentially heard nothing about the upcoming election, about the people, the candidates running, or what's going on, the parties, who they're backing, what's going I mean, the election's almost already decided. That's the thing, and yeah, there's no debates going on. There's no nothing is happening, and I think because of that, you'll, dude. I honestly, I won't deny, or I won't be surprised. Better, I won't be surprised if it's a landslide towards Trump in November, just because he's the pandemic leader. Such a bad way to put it, but I think that's probably also the best way to put it.
I mean, sitting presidents typically are able to acquire their second term. So statistically and historically, he has the advantage. On top of that, when you look at it at a little bit more nuanced level, you'll also see that the voter base for Biden was split, particularly with the loss of Bernie Sanders when he didn't get the nomination for as the Democratic nominee. A lot of Bernie followers and supporters are not and will not support or vote for Biden.
And we'll just abstain from the race.
So, I
That's
mean, that
a big
means
part of the
you'll just
base.
see a landslide the other direction.
Yeah.
It's bad, and I think that's a consequence of bipartisanism, and that's also a consequence to one member, one party policies. You get less variance, you get less you get more voter disparity. It's a very silly thing, and I think the worst part is I hate both the candidates that are running. I hate them both because it just I'm an economist, I am business focused, but I am also socially liberal, hence libertarians. You know, they just believe in let people do whatever the heck they want. Just don't bother me about it. Like, you do you. I don't care, but don't try to change me. You can do whatever you want. But problem is both sides have polarized so hard that now people who are in the middle, like myself and like a majority of people in upcoming generations who are not mass extremists, are sitting in the middle like, well, what the hell now? Like, who am I going to vote for?
The lesser of the two evils.
Or third party. I mean, I will still tell people you should vote third party even if they don't win. You're statistically speaking, you're pulling the entire average down on both sides when you vote in the middle. That's the problem is we don't teach statistics to people. We don't teach people how to manage money. It just, oh, dude, education in this country is so
Correct.
bad. It's
You know,
just
that
horrific.
that is the exact reason why in 2016 there were 16,000 votes for a dead gorilla.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? Oh my God, that should have said something to everyone that people were more willing to vote for a dead gorilla than they were to vote for the two candidates. I
God.
mean, my God, that's a problem.
It really did say something, but the actual leaders of the nation and the people weren't listening.
No, and it's the incumbent rate. You know, we need more people from younger generations to cycle in, but we also need to educate people so that when they do come in, they know what they're talking about. We don't want another AOC situation where she claims, you know, all these socialist nations are super successful and it's just because they didn't do it the right way that they have these problems. I'm like, you know, it almost seems like you didn't take a history class. Like, it almost seems like you didn't study economics. And I think she was an economics major, wasn't she? She had some
I
sort of background that seemed like she would know what she's talking about.
Seems like it. It always seems like it.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
I'm looking it up right now.
She came from Boston University, and she graduated cum laude.
Damn. So, all right. So that's
But it doesn't. Yeah, international relations and economics. And the way she talks just has me sitting there like it almost seems like you didn't take those courses, because if you did, you would understand free market systems work. It's okay to have welfare systems conjoined with a capitalist society because then it becomes a capitalist welfare society, which is a mix of socialism and capitalism. It's mm, oh, it's frustrating.
Let me tell you something, and this is definitely true for literally everything, is that if you're not interested in something when you're learning it, chances are you're less likely to retain all the information. And if she was not interested in the principles and concepts that she learned in the school and just wanted to push her own agenda, chances are she didn't retain any of the information she wasn't interested in and blocked all of it out. And now she's just spouting her own nonsense, saying, "Yeah, listen to me. I'm smart. I got this education, so I know what I'm talking about." And all this bullshit that I'm telling you is fact.
I think that's a problem when the population becomes stratified between skilled and unskilled workers, is that now any workers who are considered unskilled or uneducated, or sorry, uneducated to the point of higher education, there's going to be a huge information disparity, because then you're going to get people who are talking complex, not explaining things and generalizing situations. And now people are going to take that in as, oh, that's common knowledge, common fact. And that's it. You know, that's the story. And that is such a problem. That is such a problem because we're pushing so many people towards college education and they aren't getting a lot out of it because they don't care. You know, they're not studying what they want to study.
it's
Well, a
not
lot
only
of people don't want to study or have no idea what to study because they don't understand, how to move forward or what opportunities to take.
it's not only that, but there's also a big push for degrees and not many other forms of labor like blue labor, trade schools. We need plumbers. We're gonna need plumbers for a while, and they
We
can
have a
pay.
shortage.
Yeah, we they can pay pretty decently, but we have we don't really advertise or endorse that in this country that much.
You know, many people don't know this, but they don't just pay decently. They pay a living wage, like very comfortable living wage. I mean, you could become a plumber and opening pay is upwards to 90,000. And that's with an apprenticeship. That's more than what some analysts are getting paid in the finance market, with some of theirs on average being like 60 to 70,000. And some of these tradespeople, they move up to making six digits easy by the time they hit the middle of their career. It's not a matter of, oh, you know, I'm not making enough money in this job, it's just not worth it. It's just a matter of we're not telling people the true story, the bigger picture, which is you don't need to go to college to be successful. You don't
Yeah.
need to go to college to have a comfortable life. Garbage collectors make good money. Mail people make good money. It's, you know, it's one of those things where I just don't understand why we're not telling people that, hey, if you don't want to go to college, it's not a bad thing. Join the workforce. If you then decide college is for you, go to college. But college should not be your only option, because then it discourages people who do poorly in high school. That's the worst part.
Exactly. You don't necessarily a hands-off academic like sit down at a desk approach isn't exactly the best way to learn for a decent amount of people. You know, some people need hands-on experience or other forms of work. You know, or study to really that really vibe with them.
You know, I think that's probably going to take a generation before those ideals really start to pass on. Because the current generation, our generation roughly, our parents are still into the mindset that, yeah, you still need to go to college. It's only once we start parenting the next generation that the millennials really take over, that the millennial generation is going to start telling the next generation, yeah, I went to college and I didn't do shit with my degree. You got a job, go for it, you know? So
Yeah.
it's going to be a while because we understand this, our peers understand this, and everyone sees that not everyone is making use of their degrees and no one really, you know, not as many people care. But, you know, the parents of our generation really still pushing for education and, you know, white collar labor. And so, yeah, it's going to be a while before those ideals really sort of pass down.
And then more than that, it's also, you know, is a degree worth it? Recently, there was news that USC had increased their tuition. Currently, their tuition sits at 56,000
Good
for
God.
for I believe it's the year. It's 56,000. Um,
Holy shit.
yeah, it's moving up to 57. Um, and then that's not including mandatory fees. If you have any housing, that's going to cost you another 9,000. Dining and meals, another 6,000. Another 1,200 for your books, personal, malicious, your transportation. All told, if you're coming in and staying in a dorm or something at USC, for the is that for estimated 2 semester cost? That's 2 semesters, so a whole year is 77,000, 77,500. So multiply
Yikes.
times 4. Congratulations. What you could have used on buying a house, you spent on a degree.
Well,
I
and
mean,
that's the thing, is it's an economic trade-off, and for some degrees, yeah, that makes sense, but for others,
Does
it
it though?
makes no sense.
Even if you're an engineer, that's an insane amount of debt you're putting yourself into.
It is, but the economic trade-off, it makes sense for some. For some.
I don't know. I
yeah,
don't.
you better hope that, you know, the education you're getting when you're dropping that much money is information you're retaining, that not only once you receive this piece of paper that it's just there, that you have some meaning behind that piece of paper too. Because even though you might have a degree, you might not have retained the information to maintain the knowledge that you were expected to learn during that period of time. So,
I
like,
don't
you
like.
might have gotten a degree in engineering, but can you engineer?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with law professionals. You know, you look at lawyers; they'll typically accrue about $350,000 in debt if they go to law school, and a prestigious one that has connections to law firms. But at the end of their career, their typical net worth is in the multi millions, for some borderline billions if they properly wealth managed. But the trade off is exponential. But again, it depends on what kind of education you got and where you went for some of those degrees.
Well, yeah, the level or quality of education can vary school to school. That is true. Um, and there's can be some connections and networking at certain schools that are only available there. Ultimately, the prestige of whatever school you're going to only matters for your first job, and everything after that really doesn't matter. They don't really care or want to know about where you went for school after your first position. Um,
It depends, though. It
That's not
depends on
necessarily true.
it depends on the career and the profession. Like for law, where you went to school matters throughout your entire life. I mean, my uncle's a lawyer, and he tells me all of the people who work at his firm all came from Stanford. They're a Stanford only firm, and they wouldn't hire anyone outside of Stanford. Granted, maybe that's not how the whole industry is, but with certain professions and fields, I think there will be some retention in terms of where you went to school, albeit quality or not. You know, but I
Here's
mean,
an
yeah.
interesting one: is AI development and programming for AI and machine learning software and tech. They're quite picky about what you did before and where you came from and what school you went to and if you even went to school for it or learned it. And there's very very few schools that actually teach this stuff. Like Caltech, they have AI stuff. MIT, they have AI classes, but outside of that, you're slim pickings.
At Cal Poly, they're leading in California with Caltech for machine learning, and I'm actually going to specialize my economics degree for machine learning and GIS technology.
damn.
That's yeah, because the firm I work at doesn't have GIS or machine learning specialization, so I'll be the first at the firm to have that type of specialty. So that should make me a bit more marketable in the economist realm.
Very
Is
nice.
that you just gonna like focus your economy knowledge in that sector, or are you going to take on some aspect of machine learning to help you do what you do?
No, you take on the aspects of machine learning and you design different types of. I mean, from my understanding, the professor that teaches it is leading with a lot of research, mapping out machine learning and how that can be used on an economic level when we're trying to observe population and demographic shifts and taxation levels.
So would you guys be like designing your own software for it, or someone else has already something, or what exactly?
No, no, we design everything. At my firm, I was showing Sarkis. We use
Yeah.
a website called Macro Risk, and all of the scripts, the website design, all the analysis, everything is designed in house. We don't use third party for any of our work. None of our work is used by third party. We're actually, I mean, if anything, we're considered a third party in most legal cases. But yeah, those types of analytical tools we make completely from scratch. Um, so we are the pioneers when it comes to exploring new topics and new things, which is why I'm particularly fond of them. I mean, to be able to design something completely brand new, that's the big bucks right there.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity.
But
Hey, I wish you luck with this endeavor because that sounds actually hugely interesting.
Oh, one other thing to note. This is an important announcement. Congratulations, Michael. You have graduated with a double major in economics and finance. So,
right, I
Congrats.
thank you. Yes, I did kind of forget about that, but that is true. that that is true.
Oh, that is kind of sad that's not even like topic of the top topic here.
Yeah, it's a bummer only because there was really no graduation ceremony, but
No
you know,
ceremony,
still,
no real way to celebrate.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm still gonna do a party and celebrations and stuff once everything opens back up before I go to school again.
Go back.
Well, either way, congrats.
Yeah,
And
thank you. It feels good.
yeah, I know you're already making use of that, so that's not an issue that you have to worry about. But
Yeah, I mean to bring this to full circle, lesson of the story is go to college, do something you're passionate about, and something that you know will bring you success, and you'll be good. If you don't do that, then the costs are probably going to kick you in the balls and will suck to deal with.
honestly, if you go to college and you do get a degree, try making use of the degree to make it worth it. Because I know so many people that got the degrees and then gave up on it afterwards. I know a lot of people that graduated and then moved on, like literally their first work or job after it was something completely unrelated or just like they didn't care for the degree they got. So
And I mean, like, your degree doesn't restrict you from certain jobs either. I think, like,
no,
people get discouraged when they major in economics only because they think like, oh well, what can I do as an with an economics degree other than be an econometrician or a professor? It's like, well, okay, for starters, you can be a consultant, and those people make a ton of money, and all they do is research, or all they do is design their own scripts and programming, or they create new theories. If that's not for you, why don't you become an advisor in government or an advisor to a business? Like, there's so much you can do with degrees. I think sometimes people just they think too narrow. You know,
That
econ
was
equals economist. Done.
that was the same thing with like philosophy degrees. I had a philosophy professor in it was one of my GEs. It was philosophy class I
Oh, was
took.
it 150 or 200?
No. It was 150.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
took both. I like those classes.
and he told me that he was actually he told the class he was a consultant in a law firm.
Hmm.
So he did not have a law degree or anything, but as a philosophy, like I believe he was not master. I think he had a doctorate. Um,
He was like an expert witness for
yeah,
cases.
essentially.
Nice. Yeah.
So he would act as an expert witness in cases, um, and he was getting paid pretty decently. And that wasn't something I ever thought would be like an option for someone who had a philosophy degree. But like you're right, you need to think kind of more broadly on how you can apply your degree and in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, my firm that I work for, we're all expert witnesses, and one person at our firms, their billing rate is upwards to about 650 an hour for
Oh,
expert witness work.
ooh,
Yeah,
well,
there's another person I know who's in the 800 region. Yeah, but I mean, expert witnesses, they're aiding lawyers, so lawyers rake in a huge amount of money. Who do you think gets the other cut? We do. And yeah, I mean, just be creative with your degree. There's really no limits to how you can market yourself. Just
uh,
sell it.
an- Another good example is accounting. Most people think accounting. Oh, you're either going to be doing taxes or possibly like auditing. It's like, well, you can be a consultant, or you can go down a route of forensics accounting. So essentially, you can work to discover different forms of fraud and tracking down laundered money.
And that pays really well at the IRS too.
Yeah,
That pays really good.
there's like a lot of different routes when you kind of get creative and you start to think like, hey, how can I what are different ways of utilizing this skill set that I've just learned, just spent like 4 to 5 years to absorb.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who got his major in psychology, and he had like a difficult time trying to figure out what he wanted to do for work. Well, here's one thing you can do with psychology: apply to be a manager, because you can easily spin it in saying, I understand how people work, I can connect with people, I know what it takes to motivate a team. You
That's
you
very
can you can shape anything to your benefit. You just got to know how to do it, how to sell it. I guess more or less I'm more into that selling portion only because I used to be a salesperson in the past, but you got to sell yourself.
I don't know why, but this really reminds me of a story where there was a dude who was trying to be an engineer, and he basically said he wanted to make stuff to make the world a better place. And then a couple of years later, he found himself working for the defense industry.
Well, I mean, some of their technology leads to peace, but yeah, some of it leads to direct death.
piece or piece.
Oh man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Jeez, that was dark.
I mean, highways were a good pro from the military. That was a good thing.
Highways came from the military.
Yep. The reason we created a highway system and freeway system across the country was to mobilize forces at a faster rate, rapid deployment.
I think there was two reasons, so that you could mobilize your ground troops, and so you have places to fly and land
Yeah.
airplanes.
Yeah, that was the second reason, runways.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a plane and you need a place to land and there isn't a local airfield, you could just land it on the nearby highway or freeway.
Imagine freaking 747 coming to land
Just
on the
landing right
405.
there.
No, it's more like B-52s landing on the 405.
Good God.
My God.
I mean that is kind of interesting though, is to kind of look at some of the inventions and societal developments we got because of well-funded military programs. It's
Well,
carries
yeah,
over.
actually, the military was a large industry that took on and developed a shit ton of new technology that we use on a daily basis. You might not even think twice about.
Oh yeah.
There's an entire book, I believe Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote it. Let me pull up the name. And the whole concept is that so many of our new kind of like developments and technologies are because of there we go, as accessory to war it's called, is because
Accessory to war.
yeah, it's because of the military, or
Yeah.
military.
I think one of the biggest and most obvious technologies is microwave technology. Everyone has a
Yeah.
microwave in their home, and that whole tech was developed by the military ages ago.
Radio as well.
Radio technology, yeah, there's plenty of stuff. Sonar technology, lidar, um, drones. As of recent, people are flying drones, recreationally. The real estate industry using drones to film and map out houses for sale, random stuff like that. Or movie industries using drones. This is just recent tech. There's tons of stuff that we use on a daily basis.
Via the internet.
Timekeeping, just timekeeping. Atomic timekeeping technology started off as a military project.
Alliance, yeah, there we go. Accessory to war, the unspoken alliance between astrophysics and the military. If I remember correctly, it was being able to chart the stars was a way for like the Navy to essentially know where to go and where to attack. And this is like when we had wooden fucking boats. So
here's an interesting
Cartographic
one.
technology.
There's a thing called the DARPA Grand Challenge. The DARPA Grand Challenge is it's a prize competition for American autonomous vehicles. The idea is that the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, so basically military funding, gives out a massive cash prize to anyone who can complete the DARPA Challenge, which is roughly a 120-mile stretch in the desert between Los Angeles and Vegas. If a vehicle can drive autonomously across the entire distance without issue and make it there first, they win the challenge and they get the grand prize. And it's a huge grand prize, and there's a shit ton of companies that are developing autonomous tech to compete here to be able to then pass it on to people like us to be able to drive safely and carefully on the streets. That's military funding.
Another reason why free market competitive environments is the way to go. That's how you win. That's how you move. That's how you move forward.
Holy shit. Yo, I'm actually looking at the times it took to complete everything and the fastest vehicles right now, I think they completed it in like just over 4 hours is the
Wow.
fastest car to complete that 120-mile stretch. And that's basically the amount of time it takes to get from Vegas or from Los Angeles to Vegas. Just over 4 hours, and you have to consider that's not driving on a paved surface. That's completely off-road the entire way. So they're using a network of sensors and machine learning and AI to work together for these computers to understand what it is they're looking at, and then carefully drive around them at high speeds. So like probably 80 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour at least. Oh, well, I mean, 4 hours, 120 miles. So an average speed of roughly 30 miles an hour. Even so, off road, that's pretty damn good. Because it's not a paved surface, it's not a controlled surface, it's dirt. So you have to avoid bushes, ditches, dirt. You have to avoid rocks. You have to avoid any wildlife you might come across.
Yeah.
And they're using sensors like cameras, lidar, radar, all sorts of stuff, satellite GPS positioning, so that it can figure out where the hell it is and where to go next, and it combines all the info simultaneously. And this is government or a military-funded tech combined with other military-funded tech in a military-funded competition to pass down these technologies to the public. So that's freaking that's sweet. Yeah, it's been going on since 2004. I want to say that challenge started.
And I mean this just reassures the notion that incentives will encourage people to compete and create the best product. I mean, that's why the government has a lot of incentive programs and subsidies available for public work projects and infrastructure development for energy, water, and soon internet. Um, and I mean that's how we get better products. It's how we get better things done is by letting some private enterprises cross over and take on these contracts for the government. Now, we don't want collusion, obviously, so maybe we should enforce that a little better. But I mean, for the most part, you create the incentive, people take it, you get good stuff out of it. That's what competition does, and that's that. Compete. Good things come from competition.
Oh wow! The Wikipedia page for the DARPA challenge says that they've actually launched a new challenge, which is Subterranean. Their Subterranean challenge tasks teams consisting of university and corporate entities from around the world to build robotic systems which autonomously search and explore subterranean environments. And there's some pretty fat prizes. I think the August 2021 top prize is $2 million.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's not a small amount.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Bringing it to the subterranean, so it's not just autonomous driving anymore. Because it seems like autonomous driving in dirt with all the tech has gotten pretty good. They just have to translate the cost to, to somehow make it cheap enough to put into everyday vehicles, so that we can then use it normally.
Wow.
Wow. I mean that's why
That's wild.
Elon's getting involved. Has founded a Boring Company to try to solve the kind of problem with traffic.
Hey, did you guys hear that Tesla is about to break into the S&P 500 soon?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
happening. I don't have much to say about that. I'm just, piece of news.
Well done.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I was just showing Sarkis a lot of Tesla's numbers, and there's just a lot of reasons why I would not be. Yeah, that's amazing, but at the same time, they have a lot of wealth, so let him in. I wonder who's gonna trade out for him. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like 5 or 6 companies in there that are bull crap now. Might as well drop them.
Probably. Interesting.
Also, one thing to note, and this is this is unfortunate news. Currently, we have a reported 91,500 deaths due to COVID-19, which I believe has passed the previous flu seasons, like last year's flu seasons,
Hmm.
in the course of less than 3 months and on a shutdown as well.
Damn.
So, yeah, this is not great news. One, I don't know, I don't want to get anyone scared or anything, but one possibility and concern of mine is if we do open things up, the possibility of a second wave. I know I talked to you, Peter, about this. Um, the second wave of the Spanish flu was actually deadlier than the first. Um, and so my concern is if we open things up too quickly, cases are going to spike again. Especially before we have a vaccine of any sorts for this virus. Although
Yeah.
there's been news of Moderna apparently having some positive results in their trials, and in fact, you saw their value spike because of that. I believe that was yesterday they announced it, or was it the day before?
It was very recent. I think it was within the last couple of days. Yeah, the chances of a second wave happening are very possible, and it's a big worry, especially with the virus mutating as fast as it is. So, coming out with um, new vaccines that would continue to update with the new strains of the virus are going to be crucial. And so, you're really not going to see anyone like feel safe until that happens. So, yeah, there's a lot of worries getting passed around. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
all I
hard
can
to
say
say.
is stay safe, keep your distance, that sort of thing. Just wear protection. There's people still, getting the virus even when they're wearing a shit ton of protection, when they're wearing masks and gloves, and constantly, like even in the medical industry, when they're constantly changing out all sorts of the gloves and clothing that they're wearing just to stay safe as possible, and still getting the disease, or not disease, virus. It's very worrying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough we're definitely in a tough scenario.
Well, either way, anyways, we should wrap this week up, and we can report back next week on any of the topics we wanted to follow up with this week. And yeah, let's call this one for the week. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always write to us on our Reddit or send uh, email to us at our
ftinvestmentgp@gmail.com.
yes, and our Reddit is r/financial decapitation. I think we mentioned last week, and we're going to mention it again. If anyone wants to, just reach out to us, comment, say something, what they like, what they don't like, anything they want to discuss, any new topics, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear, if you're actually listening through, how much of our content you enjoy, if what we're talking about is just complete nonsense to you. Maybe it's something you don't understand that you want to follow up with. I definitely want to look into the GSX thing, and I'll for sure try to report back next week. So I'm gonna try and keep a steady stream of info available with this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow and see how that progresses. Um, so yeah, that would wrap up this week's episode of the FD Investment Podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we're signing off.
See you next week.
All right, bye-bye.